Ever seen a plane that looked like it could break the sound barrier but actually flew slower than your morning commute? Well, you're in for a treat. Today we're counting down 10 vintage aircraft that promised lightning speed but delivered all the performance of a flying refrigerator. These beauties looked absolutely stunning on the ground. But once airborne, they had about as much grace as a brick with wings. Number 10. Messerschmitt Me 163 Komet. The Me 163 Komet looked like pure science fiction when it appeared in 1944. This German rocket-powered interceptor had swept wings, no tail, and a design that screamed, "I'm from the future." We expected this technological marvel to revolutionize air combat with its incredible 596 mph top speed, faster than anything else in the sky at the time. But the Komet flew like an angry brick with commitment issues. Its rocket engine burned fuel so fast that pilots got just 7.5 minutes of powered flight. After that, they were gliding in what was basically a very expensive, very dangerous sailplane. The fuel was so corrosive it could literally dissolve human flesh, and several pilots died not from enemy fire, but from their own aircraft trying to eat them alive. The aircraft was designed to climb to 30,000 feet in just over 2 minutes, which sounds impressive until you realize that's about all the time you had before becoming a glider. The landing approach was so tricky that pilots described it as trying to land a falling piano while blindfolded. The wheels were jettisoned after takeoff, so pilots had to land on a retractable skid. Imagine landing a rocket-powered sled on a runway while hoping nothing goes wrong. Despite being the fastest thing in the sky, the Me 163 was useless as an interceptor. It was so fast that pilots couldn't line up shots on bombers, and so dangerous that more were lost to accidents than enemy action. The Luftwaffe lost more Komets to fuel explosions, landing accidents, and mechanical failures than to Allied fighters. One pilot called it riding a rocket-powered coffin designed by someone who clearly hated pilots. Number 9. Convair F102 Delta Dagger. The F102 Delta Dagger looked like it was designed by someone obsessed with Flash Gordon. With its triangular delta wings and needle-sharp nose, this 1956 American interceptor appeared capable of slicing through the air faster than bad news. The Air Force expected this supersonic interceptor to be their answer to Soviet bomber threats, and its futuristic design suggested it would dominate the skies. Here's the embarrassing truth. Despite looking born to break the sound barrier, the F102 couldn't actually go supersonic. Early versions could barely manage Mach 0.98 in level flight. It flew with all the supersonic capability of a particularly ambitious shopping cart. The fuselage created so much drag that the engines couldn't push it past the sound barrier, a fundamental design flaw that left the Air Force red-faced. Convair had to completely redesign the aircraft using the area rule, essentially giving it a Coke bottle shape to reduce drag. Even after this major modification, the F102 remained problematic. Pilots reported it handled like a drunk penguin trying to learn ballet. The controls were sluggish, the turning radius was enormous, and it had a nasty habit of entering unrecoverable spins when pushed too hard. The most ironic part? The F102 was designed to intercept fast-moving bombers, but it was so slow and unwieldy that it probably couldn't have caught a crop duster having mechanical problems. One pilot noted that flying it was like trying to thread a needle while wearing oven mitts. Technically possible, but you probably shouldn't attempt it. Number 8. Blackburn Roc. The Blackburn Roc was Britain's attempt at a turret fighter, essentially strapping a gun turret to a reasonably attractive aircraft and calling it innovative. This 1940 design looked competent from certain angles, with clean lines that suggested a capable fighter. The Royal Navy thought they'd solved defensive armament problems by putting all the guns in a rotating turret behind the pilot. and we expected it to give British forces a real advantage in aerial combat. The idea seemed brilliant on paper. Create a fighter that could engage enemy aircraft from unexpected angles while the pilot focused on flying. The turret could rotate 360 degrees, theoretically allowing the aircraft to defend itself from any direction. Naval planners were convinced they had created the ultimate escort fighter, but the Roc flew like a pregnant walrus with anxiety issues. The gun turret's weight and drag made it one of the slowest fighters ever built, with a pathetic top speed of 223 km/h each, slower than many bombers it was supposed to protect. The turret created so much drag that the aircraft could barely maintain altitude in a turn, and forget about any kind of aerobatic maneuvering. Here's the truly ridiculous part. The Roc had no forward-firing guns whatsoever. The pilot literally couldn't shoot at anything in front of him. Combat tactics involved flying alongside enemy aircraft while the gunner tried to hit them from the turret. A strategy about as effective as trying to win a sword fight by throwing your weapon and hoping for the best. The Roc was so spectacularly useless that it never shot down a single enemy plane in operational service. Zero. Zilch. Nada. One Royal Navy pilot described it as taking a mobile gun emplacement to a Formula One race. Technically, it has weapons, but good luck catching anything to shoot at. Number 7. Brewster F2A Buffalo. The Buffalo looked every inch the modern fighter when it appeared in 1939. With its sleek, rounded fuselage and retractable gear, it seemed to embody everything a World War II fighter should be. The clean design and compact profile suggested speed and agility that would give pilots a real edge in combat. We thought the Navy had finally found their answer to modern aerial warfare. The Buffalo was Brewster's attempt to create a lightweight, maneuverable, carrier-based fighter that could outperform anything in the sky. Its streamlined appearance and modern features like an enclosed cockpit and all-metal construction made it look like serious military hardware. The US Navy was so confident in the design that they ordered it as their primary carrier fighter. But the Buffalo proved that good looks don't translate to performance. This aircraft flew like a brick that had given up on life. It was underpowered, overweight, and climbed like a heavily laden elevator with trust issues. The Buffalo was so slow that enemy pilots often mistook it for a trainer until they realized it was actually trying to fight them. The situation got worse as the war progressed. As more equipment was added, armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, additional radios, the Buffalo became even more sluggish. By the time it saw combat in the Pacific, it was so outclassed that Japanese pilots considered encountering Buffaloes to be target practice. During the Battle of Midway, Buffalo squadrons suffered catastrophic losses. The aircraft was so inferior to Japanese fighters that pilots felt like they were flying into combat in a school bus armed with pea shooters. One Marine pilot who survived the massacre said fighting Japanese Zeros in a Buffalo was like bringing a rowboat to a yacht race. You're technically participating, but everyone knows how it's going to end. Number 6. Heinkel He 170 Greif. The He 177 Greif looked like Germany's answer to strategic bombing when it entered service in 1942. This massive aircraft had impressive size and sleek lines that suggested serious long-range capability. We expected it to be the Luftwaffe's ticket to bombing success. The Greif had a fatal flaw. Its engines were coupled in pairs, driving single propellers through complex gearing. This was supposed to reduce drag, but instead created a mechanical nightmare that made the aircraft prone to catastrophic fires. Crews nicknamed it Flaming Coffin and Reich Leiter because it burned down more often than a medieval village during a Viking raid. Even when not actively incinerating its crew, The He 177 flew like a reluctant elephant. It was underpowered, had terrible handling, and required runways so long that only a few German airfields could operate it. More He 177s were lost to fires and mechanical failures than enemy action. One test pilot noted it brought grief to everyone who had to fly it, maintain it, or stand anywhere near it. Number 5. Fairey Battle. The Fairey Battle entered RAF service in 1937 looking like the very model of a modern light bomber. With clean lines and a streamlined fuselage, it appeared capable of delivering ordnance with speed and precision. We expected this single-engine bomber to be a valuable asset in the coming war. Unfortunately, the battle flew with all the speed of a flying bathtub filled with concrete. Despite its streamlined appearance, it was painfully slow at just 241 mph, barely faster than contemporary fighters. Enemy pilots often had to slow down to avoid overshooting it during attacks. It moved through the sky like a three-legged gazelle being chased by hungry lions. During the Battle of France in 1940, battle squadrons suffered horrific casualties. In one mission, 13 out of 24 aircraft were shot down. The planes were so vulnerable that daylight missions were essentially death sentences. One surviving pilot described it as flying a greenhouse through a shooting gallery, lots of visibility, but absolutely no protection. Number 4. Douglas XB-42 Mixmaster. The XB-42 Mixmaster looked like pure science fiction when it first flew in 1944. This experimental bomber featured engines buried inside the body and contra-rotating propellers at the rear. The design was so futuristic that it appeared capable of incredible speed and efficiency, but the Mixmaster earned its nickname for all the wrong reasons. It mixed up more test flights than a food processor set to chaos mode. The contra-rotating propellers created severe vibrations that shook the aircraft so violently that instruments became unreadable. Crew members felt like they were inside a paint mixer operated by an angry gorilla. The buried engines created a cooling nightmare, constantly overheating and occasionally catching fire inside the fuselage. When this happened, the sleek bomber became what one test pilot called a flying barbecue with delusions of grandeur. Despite all its advanced features, vibration problems meant it couldn't be flown at design speeds without risking structural failure. Number 3. Northrop XP-79B Flying Ram. The XP-79B Flying Ram looked like alien technology when it appeared in 1945. This experimental fighter featured a pure flying wing design with no fuselage or tail, giving it an appearance decades ahead of its time. We expected this radical design to herald a new era in aviation. The Flying Ram was designed with a unique mission: ram enemy bombers with reinforced wing edges while somehow surviving the impact. The pilot lay prone in the cockpit, and the entire concept was about as practical as trying to win a boxing match by headbutting your opponent's fists. This aircraft flew like a suicidal pancake with anger management issues. The prone pilot position made control extremely difficult, and the lack of vertical surfaces made it directionally unstable. It wandered around the sky like a lost tourist in a foreign city. On its first powered flight, it went into an uncontrollable spin and crashed, killing the test pilot and ending the program immediately. Number 2. Curtiss XP-55 Ascender. The XP-55 Ascender looked like someone had built an airplane backwards and decided to go with it. This 1943 experimental fighter featured small wings at the front, main wings at the back, and a pusher propeller. The unconventional design appeared to be a glimpse into the next generation of fighter aircraft. Unfortunately, the Ascender proved that flying backwards isn't just confusing for pilots, it's confusing for aerodynamics too. This aircraft flew like a confused duck that had forgotten which end was supposed to go forward. The canard configuration made it longitudinally unstable, requiring constant pilot input just to maintain level flight. The pusher propeller created unpredictable handling characteristics. During one test flight, the aircraft entered a flat spin that was impossible to recover from, forcing the pilot to bail out. The XP-55 spun to the ground like a maple seed with an attitude problem. One test pilot described flying it as like trying to herd cats while juggling flaming torches. Number 1. Vought F7U Cutlass. Taking the top spot is the Vought F7U Cutlass, which entered service in 1951. This carrier-based fighter looked like it had been designed by aliens who had heard about airplanes but never seen one. With its radical tailless design and twin vertical stabilizers, the Cutlass looked like a flying Batmobile that promised to revolutionize naval aviation. But the Cutlass was so dangerous it earned the nickname Ensign Eliminator for its habit of killing inexperienced pilots. The F7U flew like an angry shopping cart designed by someone who had never seen a road. It was underpowered, directionally unstable, and had landing characteristics that made aircraft carriers feel like postage stamps. The Cutlass had a horrific accident rate, so bad that it killed more pilots in training than were lost to enemy action in the Korean War. The aircraft's poor thrust-to-weight ratio meant it could barely maintain level flight on one engine, and carrier landings were exercises in controlled terror. Despite looking like the most advanced fighter ever built, it was actually inferior to the conventional aircraft it was supposed to replace. The Navy eventually retired the Cutlass after losing 25% of the entire fleet to accidents. One pilot summed it up perfectly. The Cutlass looked like it came from the year 2000, but flew like it was built in 1900 by people who had only heard airplanes described secondhand. There you have it. 10 aircraft that prove looks can be very deceiving in aviation. These planes promised supersonic performance but delivered subsonic disappointment. Know any other aircraft that looked like race cars but flew like tractors? Drop your suggestions in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip through aviation's Hall of Shame, hit that like button and subscribe for more aviation content. Thanks for watching.